here so I can post it to our web days. All right, cool. So today we're going to talk about Axios. Hopefully we can keep this pretty brief. It's not anything too big of a different from where we've already were. If we were okay on fetch requests, Axios are very similar to fetch requests, only even nicer and better, and more user-friendly, easier to use. So that's going to be great. So let me just pull up some information. All right, so we want to be able to install Axios. That's our goal. We want to know how to perform different requests. That's our secondary goal. And we also want to understand somewhat of what makes Axios a little bit more preferable than the fetch. Although the fetch is still like the native way in JavaScript to make our API calls and requests. So if you're not using any kind of library or anything, you'll be using fetch. So like fetch is very common to see still because it is like the vanilla JavaScript way of doing it. So I still like fetch a lot. Axios though just kind of makes it a little bit nicer for us. So how do we start with using Axios? Well, we can install the package with npm install Axios. This is a way we'll be doing it a lot in the future, although we haven't really gone too deep into npm. We used it with readline and readline sync, so we know about it a little bit, right? But not too much. We know it creates, we have to do npm init, and we make this package JSON.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay.
Asking, this red line and all these things that you're labeling, does that count as a library or itself, or is it like a sub part of a library?
Good question. I think it's technically like a module, but yeah, which is like a bunch of code. I'm not sure if it's technically considered a library or not. No problem. That's a great question. Anyway, so just like readline and readline sync, we can like npm install Axios, or for like today's purposes, just to like get us going quick, we can copy and paste this script. This script basically just it's kind of like how we have our Google fonts, and we can like link to a specific font, and it goes in and interprets. Yeah. Yeah. They're not staying up, but yeah. For this part, I guess. This is inside of that script tag. There we go. So instead, when our JavaScript gets parsed, when our HTML goes to get parsed, it will hit the script tag, and then it will run the code that we're getting from this source, which is just like the library, and then we'll have access to the ability. We'll have the ability to make Axios calls inside of our JavaScript. So copy and paste that, which it should be in the class notes, or you can look at it here, but that'll be harder for you to read. I can also post it in Slack. That might be easiest. So I posted something in Slack. Just add that. We're going to take that, and we are. I gotta shrink this.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So this src link is that technically a route, or is it a URL, or what is it?
It's a. Well, I guess it's kind of like it's an API call to specific. Like we're gonna go to that address.
You guys called that a route before. Does that count?
What do you mean by route?
Well, I got that word from you guys when I was trying to figure out it's not a HTTP link. It's something special. So that's what I got. I want to make sure what I'm defining that as in my mind?
It's a link to the library, to the Axios library, so we have access to all the code that comes with Axios. That's not like a clickable link. It's just like the path to that link that it's using. It's technically like calling it.
So like the reason why we have access to fetch without doing this, right, is because fetch is just built into the Chrome browser, right? Fetch is just available in Chrome no matter what. The reason why we have to do this is because Axios is not available by default in the Chrome browser. So what this does is it gives us access to the keyword Axios that we can use now, just like it was a part of the Chrome browser or the JavaScript or whatever.
Yeah. And so if you go to the URL, you actually see like all of this code, right? So this looks pretty much impossible for us to read, but the computer reads it and is like, oh, these are all things I'm going to be doing. But that's just like for educational purposes. It's not what we're going to be using. So if we add that as a script tag in our head, now we'll have access to the Axios library. So let's take a look. Let's get something working here. Let's check this out. I guess we should probably start with just like what we came from. So we currently have fetch. I'm not going to go all the way back to XML because I don't think any of us want us to do that. Johnny.
So you're allowed to have 2 script sources.
Oh yeah, totally. So you can have as many script sources, script tags as you want. And there are things like, if we were playing that tic-tac-toe game and we had files calling from other files, but if we were calling all of these files in the main HTML, the order that we place the script tags becomes all of a sudden very important if they're referring to each other. And so there's these things called like Webpack, which bundle all of these script tags up and then give you just one script tag. And so you don't have to worry about the order. But for our purposes right now, we don't really have to worry about the order. So I've got our entire HTML in an event listener for the DOM content loaded. I have a button that says click, let's just say click me. This is a leftover from the other day. Click me, and I'm going to just have a UL, and I'm just going to call it UL for now. And so inside of here, I'm going to grab our button with our document button. I'm going to have this event listener. It's going to listen for a click, and then on click, I'm going to call this function getMovies. Cool? And what's getMovies do? Well, getMovies is going to send a fetch request to Ghibli, the Ghibli API, to get all the movies. And then, this is going to return a promise. We're going to get back our response. And then, we're going to turn it into JSON. And that's when we'll be able to see all of our movies. So, I'm going to throw in a couple of debuggers here so we can see it at each stage. All right. So we go here, I'm going to reload. I click. Oops, I think I missed. Okay, we hit our first debugger, and we can see that it's on. There we go. We're in the first one. We can go. Can't hear you. Yeah. Better? Oh, sure. Better or more? Yeah, okay. More or? All right, cool. So we can see that we're on this line of our code because we've paused on the debugger and it highlights it. And we can look at what our current response object is. We can say res We go, okay, so this is what we have. Look, interesting. All right, well, we still don't have all the data we actually want, right? So, and we can look, if we go back to our code, we're going to return res.json, and that's going to return a promise. And then we're going to get its response. So I'm going to continue here, and we should hit our debugger again. We do. This time we're in this debugger, and we can look at our response. Res. Okay, great. So now we've got our array with all those movie objects. Right? We've been here. We've gotten here before. Excellent. So now if we wanted to print them all out, we would iterate through this, and we would create a new LI or something, and we would append that to the UL, right? Question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you talk about how this is not needed to use the JSON thing? Like, am I forgetting what I read? Because I remember that the file we got before was like a string or something, and we had to like.
That was in the XML HTTP request.
So this is like usable data, just the way it is.
Now this is usable. What we had to do, that two-step process. We had to get our response object. We had to return our response.json, which turned this into the JSON. And then we finally got our array. So we had to do this extra whole step. Also, fun fact worth noting, if I put a catch at the end of here, and I do error, and I throw in a debugger, and I'm going to change my address so that it's wrong. I'm going to say films, and I refresh. I'll have to click, and I end up in this debugger. I hit our then statement instead of our catch, because we're still, and we're getting back a 404, and we can see it. Res, let's see if we get like a status. We have a 404. This is a status not found. So that's one of the things that kind of sucks about fetch. I mean, fetch is great, but it's like, kind of want us to hit our catch statement, not like as if we had a successful call. That's kind of disappointing. So anyway, if I continue, I'm still in this res, just my length is null. Now, we never hit our catch. When I continue, yeah, so we never even hit the catch, ever. Not really the ideal behavior, right? We could send an if statement and check if it's not, a status of 200, we could throw an error, and then we'd hit our catch. But that's just not our ideal behavior. It's not what we would intuitively expect. Introduction to Axios. So with Axios, we do things a little bit different. Let me go back to, so with Axios, instead of the word fetch here, I do Axios, and I say what kind of method I want to do. So this is a GET request.
Share this code up to now.
Sure. All right, I'm going to be sharing this code up until now. And I guess I'll do the index.html as well. Who's excited for Axios? Anybody? All right, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah! All right, Axios is pretty cool. Although really, I don't actually mind fetch, to be totally honest. But Axios is cooler. So, okay, so let's keep going. So let's see what happens. I've just made one change, right? I've added, instead of the word fetch, I've said Axios.get. Okay. Let's go for it. Oh, let me save. And let's try it out. So I'm going to refresh. I go click me. And I go right into our catch statement. Right? Our debugger hit our catch. Well, that seems pretty nice. And I can look at our error. This puppy. Questions about that? About us hitting an error. Hitting our catch statement. All right, cool. Do we see why that's like more of a desired behavior? Are we awake? Okay, we're awake. Do we see why that's a desired behavior? And it's okay if we don't. Okay, yeah. So we don't because when we're sending out this GET request, we're wanting information back. We're expecting an array of objects. We're expecting some sort of information. And so if we've sent out a request and we're not even on the right address and all we get back is a 404 not found, so that's like we're not going to get any information back, right? We're not going to have an array. We're not going to get to iterate over data and do things with it. It's just nothing. And so when we had fetch, it said, here you go, here's nothing, and everything's okay. And we would go, okay. With Axios here, we hit our catch right away. It says, hey, nothing here. Here's your error. There's no point in continuing down this chain. There's nothing. There's been a mistake. Your call is incorrect. Does that clear that up a bit? All right. Well, it's nice to not. So it's one of the things that's tricky about JavaScript is like a silent fail, right? And this is all kinds of programming things. If your program fails without letting you know, and it's failing silently, that's super duper hard to debug because you don't. First off, you don't know when it necessarily fails or why it fails or anything. This doesn't fail silently here. This goes, nope, you're in your catch statement. This did not work the way you want it to work. So that's a huge advantage. Second advantage, let's correct our address so we get the right thing and we don't hit our catch statement.
Sorry. The arrow doesn't tell you where the arrow is.
It says failed with a status 404.
Also, you know for sure that 404. You have to look at the code. I mean, the error code. It's a URL.
Well, it just lets you know that it's not found, which might be a URL issue. It's nice to be able to control your errors because you might someday want to do personalized error messages that show up for things. Like you might be able to interpret the error and let the user know.
Right. What I'm getting to is that if it's an error that I don't know that happens to refer to 404, some other error that we would not be able to suppose.
I will tell you what number. Sure. Mateo?
I think just maybe to confirm, you're saying if you're not using Axios, it's not going to necessarily always tell you. Sorry.
Well, it's just not going to catch. It's not going to go to your catch statement.
If you're not using Axios.
Right.
You're not using Axios.
Unless you set it up that way. Like I could check if the status is 404. And if it is, I could throw an error. Eric.
So, I think what all in love on what Michelle said, like, could we only get this result if we only use Axios?
No,
we set it up in the previous.
you can set it up, but it's
Okay.
an extra, it's more code to write. But yeah, I mean, we could set this kind of behavior up probably with XML HTTP requests too. It's just what's easier. Second advantage. So we fix our request so we're going to hit the right link. Cool. Let's try again. Let's refresh. Click on our button. We hit our debugger. Let's look at our response object this time. Oh, if we look also, we're at the very first response, right? So if we remember last time, what we just saw, we got this response object. that then we had to do res.json. Do we remember that? All right. Now when we look at our response, we have, it looks a little bit different. Now if I go res.data, I already have it. I don't need to have some baloney.then res.json with every time I get stuff. I now only have to have the first one. So now I can get rid of this statement and get rid of this statement. So I was able to eliminate one then. That's a win. That's less code. That's a win. So that's mostly Axios. So now we would have all of our res, and we could do with it whatever we want. We could iterate through it, and post all of the movie titles. It depends on what I'm trying to do. So if I just wanted to return, because I don't know when this is going to come. It's still a promise. So returning from promises are all right, but if I want to do something with that, I'd still would have to use then, which is okay. But like, let's say I wanted to show all the movies. I could grab my UL. I could say something like, all right, let's think about this. I could go show movies, pass in res.data. I could just call another function, and then I could define a function here. Function, show movies, takes in an array. I could take the UL. Right, and then I'm back to like kind of what we were doing. So I can do array dot for each movie, and then I could say like let li, create our element of li, change the inner text to be our movie.title, and then just append. So I don't necessarily have to return something. I could just do something from there. So if I were to refresh it now, get all of our movies. That being said, if I'm only just firing a function like I am here, I don't need to put this in a function. I could not invoke this. Because it just takes in a callback function. So this is the same thing. Let me make sure it still works. Yep. So now I just have a listener on my button that says, hey, on the click, fire this callback function. That function does an Axios.get call, gets the movies, then takes the response data and puts it into the function show movies. This one just grabs our UL from our HTML page, loops through our array, creates an li for each element in that array, changes the inner text to the movie title, and then appends the li to our UL that it grabbed. Right? Any other questions? Yeah, Johnny.
See how you call back.
Right. I mean, if we think about it, when we've been writing in our ES6, we haven't been invoking those functions, right? They've just been an anonymous function. So instead of writing an anonymous function, I've just named a function over here. So I still don't invoke it. If I invoke this, that would run just right away, and it wouldn't have like we wouldn't have it anymore. Right now, I just have this callback that's waiting for that click to happen, and then it will invoke that function. Johnny,
You have any curly braces in front of line 20?
in front of line 23?
Click to get
What do you mean?
like the ES6 arrow.
Here?
After that. Yeah, right. At the end of that.
Here?
Yeah. The ES6 arrow.
For what?
I guess I'm thinking about setting up as a function.
Oh, this is a function. Get movies is a function.
Okay. So
Right. We've created this function right here. So we're just passing it in.
Oh, okay, it's passing.
Yeah. Mateo, do you have a question? Any other questions on the Axios Git request? Cool. Crispina.
So you called Axios a library, and I just wanted to make sure that it's not a module, it's a library.
I think it's both. Or I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
What's
I'm
it say?
super
What's it say it is?
It says that it's a module. Like the libraries are something different in JavaScript, but in other languages they're called libraries. So I was super confused when I was trying to look that up.
Yeah.
Because like in Java, they have libraries like categorized in that way. Like I didn't know what to think. I was trying to figure that out.
Well, you can kind of think about it as it's like a little bit of both. A library, it's just like it's code that's available to us. That's all. You can label it anything you want. It's all based on context. But the whole idea is there's someone wrote code somewhere else, whether you want to call it a library or a module, whatever. And we're saying we're going to access that person's code and be able to use it to our benefit. That's all. Let's see if it's saying, if it tells us specifically what it is. I mean, doing it like this is definitely a module. Doing it like this, I think, is more of a library. Let's not get too caught up in those words, though. But that's a great clarification. Johnny.
I wanted to ask that question. See where it says install Axios?
Yep.
When we link it into our HTML file, it's the same as installing to the terminal.
No, we're doing it.
I'm using CDN.
Yeah, so this is for when we want to add it in our HTML file. This is when we want to add it to our module packages.
More on that later. We've been using them in the practice exam and the exam for the first unit, right? And you install that testing library, right? But we're not going to do NPM module stuff until next unit. So for now, if you're using Axios, just put that script in there above the script of your main JavaScript file.
David.
Are we to include that event listeners by default invoke function?
They invoke the callback function whenever that event has been fired.
Yes.
They sit there and they wait. They've got like, it's like some crazy lunatic outside of a celebrity's house with a handful of pennies. And they're just waiting to see the celebrity. And on the event that the celebrity leaves their house, they throw the pennies.
I'm just confused as to why we do it this way. Like, where you use it.
What do you mean? Oh, just because of the way the data comes in, it's less clear sometimes. Any other questions about the pennies? Johnny.
That's why you don't get movies. Once you click it, it gets invoked.
Yep. It's just a callback function. Because when we were writing it the other way in the ES6, we haven't been invoking it. It's just been an anonymous function that we've written on the spot. All right. All right, so what about like post requests and all that? How do we handle that with Axios? That's a great question. How did we handle that with fetch? Do we remember? Did we ever have to do it with fetch? Did we do post requests with fetch?
We did post requests in the assignment.
The lecture, did we do that? All right, well, we can briefly go over it. I have fetch here. So how did we do post requests with fetch? Okay, well, kind of back to the idea. Let me enlarge this. So if we've got our button here, right, we had this on click and we wanted to do this. We click here on the button and we get fire request. And on the fire request, we could have some sort of data. So like, let's pretend somebody was filling out some sort of form of some sort maybe, and we have data, name pointing to Corey. And we would have our fetch data. This is another object that kind of tells a few things. It has the method that we want to do, which is post. It has a body, which takes in an data object. So for this example, it's name and Corey. And then it has this headers, new headers. I'm not totally sure what we need that for. Don't worry about it for now. I don't know if you have to include it. I would. Just not sure what it's doing.
That whole bulk of that fish, I mean, the way that you're structuring that comes from the fish, right?
This?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fetch takes an object as an optional second argument. So if we wanted to look at all these posts on this API, I could do post and then fetch data, and it would pass in this object. Here, actually, let's do it. Let's go into our code here. Yes, for fetch. Yeah. So let's actually just put all this code in here, because why not? All right. So to be totally clear, let's first not do it with fetch data. Okay. Do we have a button? Did I already grab a button? I did. I'll just do it. Okay, so our button is button class. I'm gonna grab that. I'm gonna grab this button at the top. Query selector button. And then I'm just going to add a listener on button. So I'm going to say button dot add event listener, and on click, I'm going to do fire request. Oops. Are we good up to this point? Are we okay with the code? Not worrying about the fetch data. Let's just see what this API is, because I don't think we've shown it yet. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to our Ajax here, click on our button. We hit our first debugger here, which is after we've already done the JSON, right? Which is something we had to do with fetch. And we've looked at our response, and we've seen that our response is all of these random posts. They have a title, they have a body. Let's see if we can open one up more. ID and a user ID. Well, maybe all right, whatever. That's okay. So if we wanted to post something to it, which is kind of awkward because we can't really add anything to this person's database, but we can kind of like fake it, so it gives us back like an okay response. Like, this would have worked if I'd have let you. And so we do that, right? So we're going to add some data. Maybe let's do a title, and I'm going to say trying it out, and let's give it a body, and I'm going to say like perfect. Okay, so now we're posting to in our fetch data, we're going to say the method we want is to post. This is the body of this whole thing is this data object. We've got this headers, header new request. And inside of our fetch, we're going to add fetch data. We're going to add this optional argument. So now when we go to run it, let's try again. Click on our button. We hit this, and we get that our response, oops, it says this is our response, just ID 101. Maybe we can get a better response by throwing a debugger before. Here, let's see if we can get something a bit more interesting. Refresh. So our first response, a response object. Oh my gosh, why does that keep happening? We can kind of take a look at this. Okay. Okay, true. It's a status 200 or 201, so that should be okay. Anything in the 200s is usually okay. It's like okay. 200 okay is like the main one we talk about, but really 201's fine. It's not going to throw a complaint. Okay, so that's how we could post. Yeah, Crispina.
Can you clarify why you're showing us the difference between having that argument and not having it? Because I'm not sure.
One is a GET request, one is a POST request. The first one being the GET request.
Having the argument, the second argument is the GET request.
No, having the second argument is we're doing a method type of POST. This is passing in this whole object. It's a great clarification. Yeah, so fetch's default is we're going to go fetch. We're going to go get information. But we can change that by passing in an object. Does that make sense?
So having the argument is a method type, of course, post. So you are posting with the argument without it.
Yeah, I mean, I could also do puts, patch, delete, any of them. I have to just write what I'm doing with method, and then pass in like the things that whatever that method is that they need. These are your RESTful APIs, right? There's get, put, post, patch, delete.
So like without the fetch data, what was the point of doing it without?
That's a GET request. If we do it without, we're just going to be getting data. Here we go. But continue to the next thing that's more interesting. And we get to see that our response is this array with 100 items. JR.
So in this case, the header will be
In that object?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that header is doing. We'd have to look it out. I don't think it's being the title.
because we did push the data. The title there, where
This would be part of putting it into the database. This is like all of the data
okay.
that's going to get added to the database, which we will eventually learn more about. We're just kind of introducing it. We're just touching it. We're mostly still going to be using GET requests. Like, I don't have to get too worried yet until the next unit will start to be a lot more interesting to get the rest. What do you mean?
You posted. I don't.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't post this time. Let me go back. So this is with the post. I get this response object. I continue through that. I hit the next one. It says that our ID is 101. If we remember when we got all the posts, we were getting 100 things in an array. My money's on those IDs were 1 through 100. And so this is kind of showing us like, hey, that next one would have been like, if we've added it to the database, we're giving you back the ID that that it would have attached to it, which is 101. All right. So if this is the way we do it with fetch, how do we do it with Axios? Right? That's the $1,000,000 question. All right, let's do it. So instead of having Axios inside of our fire request, let's get rid of this whole object here. Don't need it anymore. And instead of Axios, fetch, I'm going to write Axios. I'm going to do dot post. Pretty convenient. And for fetch data, I'm just going to pass in data, or I could pass it in directly right here, right? This is just a variable, right? This means this. And so now I can try it, save it, go over to our code, refresh, click on the button, kapow! And we're not even going to have to do that response.json like we did before. And we should just be able to look at our response straight up. And we got response.data. And we've got our, this one gives us back even nicer data, looks like, than before. Response.data. It's like, that's the post we've added. Axios is pretty nice, right? A little nicer than fetch.
I see the JS.
Yeah. That's easier to remember than the other one, fetch.
Very similar. Just the keyword Axios fetch.
Yeah, exactly. It's, so instead of fetch, right, we're just saying the word Axios, and then we're saying dot, and then we're saying the type of request we're making, whether it's get or post or patch or put or delete. And then we're passing in the API that we're trying to hit and the data that we're trying to pass. You first, yeah.
So you said that the next line with the dot then with the response.json, we don't need that.
Right, we no longer need this because we're already getting our first response. If we look here, we're in the very first debugger, and we already have access to like response.data. If I continue, let's see what happens. I think we're still going to hit. Oh, I go into. I actually hit our error because it says response.json is not a function, which is from where I'm doing this. This is no longer needed because I already have that. Let's see what happens now. A good question.
Axios.
We'll probably go into our next then. Yeah, we'll go into our next then, but it's just undefined because we didn't return anything.
So Axios prices the data for you, right? And
Yeah.
another question is, fetch. It's the same stuff as Axios, but we also use get. So if we were to use different methods like post, it would be that extra step.
It's that optional, yeah, it's that extra object that you're passing in, but they're not really the same, right? Because with fetch, well, we didn't have as good of error handling. We also had to do that response.json to return another prompt. This one, we don't have to do any of that. Once we get to our first, the first one, we don't need this one anymore. Good question. Yeah, Crispina.
Did it error there because we didn't have access to that module anymore, the JSON one?
No, we still have access to everything. It just errored because when we did response.json, like I don't think part of our response had a function called JSON attached to it. Right? This is like an attribute.
Yep.
And then it would return a function that we'd invoke. The Axios, what it brought back didn't have that function. So it was just like, whoa, you don't have that. Hold up. Any other questions on Axios? Sounds like a Harry Potter word, right? Axios. All right, cool. Well, that's it then. That's Axios. You can get to work on your assignment and practice exam. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Thanks for the time. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.